and welcome to An Evening with Nirvana, podcast where I talk to various guests from the Doom community about level design, map making, and content creation. Today on the show, I'm talking to SoBad. You'll likely know him as a friendly face on Twitch at /SoBadDoom, for his Doom mod Let's Plays on YouTube, as well as his analytical content. You might also know him as the creator of Map 5 of the Balls of Steel community project, which came out recently. So welcome to the show, SoBad. How are you doing?
Thanks very much. I'm doing great, and by the way, thanks for scraping the bottom of the barrel to get little old SoBad on the podcast.
Well, I'm running out of guests. So.
I figured.
No.
I could tell. I could tell. How are you doing?
No, I'm good. I'm doing good. We had a riveting conversation beforehand, so I'm all pumped up. But
Raring to go.
yeah, it definitely wasn't due to scraping the bottom of the barrel there. I feel like something was resonant when I watched your content, and I just thought you seemed like you'd be an entertaining guest, so that was why the invite was extended.
Wow. I've never been called resonant before, so I mean I'm double plus flattered. Thank you.
Well, there you go. What was your first experience with Doom?
Yeah, I guess my experience would be a little more boring than most, but it just would have been having your dad install Doom on the old Windows 95 computer and playing that as a kid when you were way too young, and my mom would be freaking out because she'd come down and see my brother and I playing violent video games and should they be playing this? And my dad was, pretty firm on it being fine. But I think most people have this roller coaster experience with Doom where they're into it for a while and then they don't play it for 10 years and then they come back. And I didn't so much have that as I would be playing Doom a little bit every year for basically my whole life. I don't think I've ever stopped really.
And that was Doom 1, Ultimate Doom? Or
It would have been both Doom 1 and Doom 2. I didn't ever play Final Doom as a kid. It wasn't until probably like my late teens that I went back and tried Plutonia and TNT finally. And I just wasn't a huge fan at that point.
of TNT, specifically?
Yeah, yeah, TNT and Plutonia didn't gel too much for me, but I think I had enjoyed too many really high quality PWADs at that point that Plutonia and TNT were kind of showing their age by that point. I kind of tried them for the first time too late, and I'd already started my PWAD progression.
Interesting. So which IWAD did you enjoy out of Doom 1 and Doom 2 then?
I think Doom 2 would be my go-to. I think all the interesting combat came in Doom 2. There are some level design concerns, obviously, but I think Doom 1 has those as well. But if you name any interesting monster to fight, any interesting Doom monster, they're all Doom 2 monsters, right? The Revenant, the Mancubus, the Arachnotron, Archvile, Pain Elemental, anything that does something cool and unique, they all came in Doom 2, plus the Super Shotgun. So I feel like in the modern day, if you grade Doom on a curve, it's a phenomenal game for when it came out, but I don't think it holds up nearly as well. Whereas I think Doom 2 still holds up today, but just the level design maybe has aged a little bit more noticeably than everything else. But the gameplay is still solid as a rock.
What about the Cyber Demon though? Huh?
Yeah, no, the Cyber Demon, yeah, he's an interesting monster, but I think you don't see much of him in Doom 1, obviously, because he doesn't come in till he's a boss in episode 2, right? And yeah, you don't see too much of him in Doom 2 either. When does he show up? The Living End, there's a Cyber Demon. Where else is there even a Map 8, Tricks and Traps? Other than that, he doesn't show up too much.
Map
So,
20.
oh yeah, gotcha. Yeah, he fights the Spider Mastermind for you. It's neat to see them sprinkle the boss monsters throughout the mappage in Doom 2. And but yeah, I just think like the Revenant I think is the best monster in Doom.
Okay, well,
And
that's the last question of the podcast. You've just really jumped ahead.
oh no, I'm so sorry. We should have briefed each other before we got in here. We wasted all our time talking about other stuff.
It's fine. You've ruined the whole format of the show, but that's not a big problem.
I'm so sorry. Let's scrap this and start over. What do you say?
Yep, sounds good. Come in like really stunted like conversation as I'm guiding you through each question.
Please and thank you. If you could,
Like
it
it's a
would relieve my
defamation
anxiety.
lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about getting into custom content. When did you actually first start playing P-words?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't remember the year, but it was pretty young. It was basically as soon as I was old enough to understand an online tutorial for how to run a PWAD from the command line or batch file,
Mhm.
then I would have been trying stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't know when that was specifically. It's hard. You're asking me to dig way back deep here. But
Okay, but it was pretty early on for you then that you were like already seeking out custom stuff.
yeah, I would have already been playing PWADs by, the early mid 2000s
Mhm.
and forward. And then probably didn't get around to Plutonia until and TNT until God, I want to say like maybe 2013 or later. Like I was real late getting back to those. So by that point, so many incredible things had come out that yeah, it just didn't feel the same. I don't even think I finished TNT, if I'm being honest with you. Don't tell the dean, please.
Oh my god. TNT's good. All right. Well, it is and it isn't. It's interesting more than it's good. Most likely. But
That's what you get out of it, right? I was listening recently again to your the interview you did with Mount Pain 27,
mhm.
and yeah, you had brought up that you thought TNT, had nailed the atmosphere, which I thought was interesting. So if
Mhm.
you get value out of that part of the experience, if you're an atmosphere type of person, then yeah, it might be a really enjoyable experience. But I'm kind of in the odd camp where if it doesn't have the gameplay, I can't enjoy it. And I'll give you maybe a bonus point if your atmosphere is stellar, but it'll raise you from a 9 to a 10 for me. But if your gameplay puts you at a 1, then your atmosphere is not going to get you higher than a 1 for me.
Interesting. I think I'm able to maybe like compartmentalize my gaming experiences a little bit, where I can be like I can enjoy TNT for atmosphere and MIDI and weird abstract spaces, gigantic rooms that have no purpose, etc. And then I can enjoy Plutonia because it's built around like solid combat and stuff. But maybe the sense of place is like a little bit less interesting in Plutonia. So I try to appreciate things for different elements, I guess.
Absolutely. I wish that I I wish that I had that circuitry about me, but I don't seem to be able to do that. I'm very arcadey in my gaming sensibilities, so
Hmm.
if I'm not very engaged with the task I've been asked to do, then you're going to lose my interest really quickly.
It might also be from mapping like a lot, making a lot of Doom maps, playing a lot of Doom. You just get a little bit bored of seeing the same stuff. So when something does something a bit weird, uh, like I think, you know, maybe the more into Doom you get, the further from the Plutonia spectrum, and the more into the TNT spectrum you end up.
So you think you're kind of deriving an artistic enjoyment out of it rather than maybe a gaming enjoyment, if that makes sense?
If you want to put it that way, sure. Yeah.
Well, I want to put it how you would want to put it.
It's definitely an aesthetic experience rather than pertaining to the actual gameplay, because TNT definitely has some real stinkers in terms of gameplay.
I see. So is there any part of it where sort of the experience is impressive in a way rather than necessarily fun?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I gotcha. And so, but you can derive quite a bit of enjoyment from being impressed on in that way. I take it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you play like some slaughter stuff, like once the challenge gets pushed to a certain limit, I think part of it is like you'll definitely get to a point where you're just not having that much fun with a fight, where it's like, okay, like I'm getting destroyed by this fight over and over again, but you can still come out of it at the other end and be impressed with the setup and the monster composition and the way the fight's put together, but not necessarily have had an enjoyable time just because you got wrecked for like an hour, you
That's true, but I mean, have you considered masochism?
know. Well, Uh, different kind of pleasure, perhaps. The pain in itself is the pleasure, whereas I don't enjoy the pain aspect. I'm enjoying a separate element, and then being able to put the pain to the side.
Yeah, that's fair for sure.
So, like during when you were discovering p words and stuff, what was sort of the first big p word for you that you really enjoyed?
I think the first one that was a real wow moment for me, where I just couldn't believe the quality of the thing I was experiencing, was probably Ancient Aliens,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe not. I'd have to check the date on that. I get these things mixed up so much. I think Ancient Aliens would have been the one that I first played and thought, "Holy crap, this is like a AAA game." If I didn't know it was Doom, the quality of the levels and the quality of the gameplay experience front to back is so lovingly crafted. There's so many neat moments that I just can't believe somebody made this for free, essentially by themselves, right? It's just an insane. I mean, well, I think some other mappers contributed with some maps, but I just mean
Yeah.
as a project, you get used to playing with stock Doom textures and you get used to playing these WODs where people are kind of doing what they've been taught to do by playing Doom. A lot of the early 2000s WODs, they're kind of just, Doom, the expansion pack, and there's not a real experimentation with the gameplay aspects of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come across the more modern stuff. And if we're just talking about Ancient Aliens still, there's a real design behind encounters and a real effort put into the conveyance of how you work your way through each map. It just seems very crafted to help the player have the best time possible while still being engaging. I was also impressed that it has some custom monsters in it and they don't totally ruin the experience for me, which is unique.
Mm-hmm.
So probably Ancient. Do you know off the top of your head what year that would have come out? Are we talking like 2012 or when's Ancient
Mm,
Aliens?
I feel like maybe it's later than 2012, but I don't know.
Maybe it is.
Yeah, I'm not
Maybe it's
actually
way
sure.
later. Should we check? God, I'm scared now. We'll look it up.
Um, I feel like maybe it's I'm gonna say 20 like 15 maybe. Is that too late? I'm trying to think.
Maybe.
Skillsoul's been
Oh, it's
actually.
2016.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I thought it
Oh, so
was
I'm
like
all
quite a bit
mixed up
later. Yeah.
then. Because Sunless would have come out before Ancient Aliens then.
Yep, I think so.
So it would have.
Maybe like
Oh,
the
so it would
year
have been.
before or something.
Yeah. Wow, I'm all mixed up here. I'm very bad with this stuff with my ordering of the dates, and I'll conflate things. But yeah, Ancient Aliens. At least we know what a standout experience that here I am attributing it to kind of my first big one.
Mm-hmm.
But no, so I would have played Sunless first. So this is really embarrassing because Sunless is my favorite WOD of all time. And you're like, what was your first great WOD that you played? And I'm like, oh, the one that came out after Sunless.
Well, you just got your dates mixed up. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you play like 20 full megawads a year minimum, and you just forget when things come out. But I guess the spirit of the answer to the question is just that eventually the PWADs started coming out consistently that were of such an incredible quality that you just start to kind of reevaluate how we look at Vanilla Doom and Vanilla Doom 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can't blame them because who were they supposed to base their level design sensibilities off of, right? How many other FPS games are there? It's kind of just basically just Wolfenstein, and that's the same company anyway. So they're just wandering around blind, trying to come up with fun maps for the player base to play, and they've got to just learn from their own mistakes. So if you grade it on a curve, it's wonderful, but yeah, the level design maybe doesn't hold up so well under a modern lens. Now that things like Sunlust and Ancient Aliens and Valiant and such have come out. But what blows my mind is just that the core gameplay mechanics still hold up so well. Just the enemy design, the weapon design, interesting mechanics like pain chance and sound propagation. There's just so much neat stuff that I can't believe they thought of it all in 1993. 1990, yeah, 93, right? God,
Uh-huh.
I don't know any of
Yep,
my dates.
that is correct.
And yeah, it blows me away because if you watch any amateur, make a game these days, which would, I mean, I'd include myself in that. the number of mistakes you make is just insane, and you don't know till after you release the game, oh, this isn't fun at all. How did I not know this wasn't fun? But it's hard. So to release basically the first FPS game in 1993 and get so much stuff right that people are still copying you nowadays, and when they don't copy you, their games are worse. I don't understand how they did that. Are Romero and Carmack just time travelers? Like, what's going on? But it's astounding. But yeah, all of that is just to try and justify before people bully me why if you play Plutonia, if you play TNT after you enjoy more modern PWADs, then it's just I don't think it holds up through
Well,
no
yeah,
fault
yeah.
of the original creators. Yeah.
It's why I
That,
always tell people to play Dark Souls 1 first, no matter what. Because
mm,
I know people who have played Dark Souls 1 after they've played Dark Souls 3, and they're like, this feels terrible. Like, uh, or, after they've played other games that have just stolen from the Souls series and stuff. Because DS1 comparatively does feel pretty clunky these days if you're coming from like other games that have iterated upon what it began, in the genre. So it's the same with
yeah.
Doom, I guess.
Well, I love that analogy because Dark Souls kind of birthed its own genre as well, right? We have Souls-like games coming out kind of
Yeah.
left and right, and it's just such an amazing thing to see somebody try a new thing for the first time and get it right enough that it's not only still enjoyable today, even if it shows the stitching a little bit, but you just have other companies and other creatives saying, "Oh, I want to make my version of that game and I want to steal as much as I can because they just nailed it and tweak only a few things to see if I can make my own experience." And really, at this point, I'm just talking in circles because I'm so embarrassed that Ancient Aliens came out in 2016. That's gonna weigh on my conscience forever. I'm gonna have to look up like what the CAC award winners were back in like 2010 to get a better idea of what I was actually doing back then. So I can't remember it all. But yeah,
Yeah,
Dark
you'll
Souls
have
is a great
to.
example.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk a bit about Sunlust as well, I mean, always happy to hear about Sunlust. Certainly one of maybe the best example of a mega wad that exists. Uh, I would say in terms of like uniqueness level per level, challenge, the overall like aesthetic experience, uh everything really. Just probably the closest you're gonna get to like a perfect mega wad, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's fantastic. It's tough but fair. You know, it seems to be put on this pedestal of like, oh, like you're not ready to play Sunlust, like it's one of the hardest wads ever. But I mean, A, turn the difficulty down. Just go enjoy Sunlust. You don't have to practice for 2 years just for the right of playing it on UV. You know, you can play Sunlust on HMP, play it on Hey Not Too Rough. I know a lot of effort went into balancing for those difficulties. But yeah, what blows me away the most about that is as kind of an over analytical type, I'll be thinking about a combat situation. Maybe I want to make a video on the channel to explain a certain concept. And whenever I kind of build this hypothetical combat puzzle and say this would be a great way to demonstrate a specific skill, I realize that I'm just making something that's already in Sunlust. They beat me
Yeah.
to it. I can't seem to think of anything that Rubix and Dan didn't already think of and do better. The usage of the different monster types is phenomenal in that. I love that kind of every 3 maps, I think, they change up the vibe of the visuals completely. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this really nice pacing to it. Even as someone who barely cares about that normally in a given experience, I appreciate that. It helps vary it up, and the difficulty curve is so nice, where it kind of increases over 10 maps and then resets a little bit, increases over the next 10 maps, cuts back again, and increases in that 3 episode format. It's just great. Yeah, it's hard to think of any flaws with it at all. Maybe the womb. Who knows?
I like the room a lot, actually.
I like the womb too, but it is very jarring at that point, right? To suddenly be thrown into that to
I
that map,
think
but
it's
very
a
beautiful.
like a very important map in terms of Well, A, it's where the whole palette for Sunless comes from, uh, because that's when Rubik's discovered software mode essentially, and decided he wanted it to look good in software mode, which is why the palette changed to be like deeper reds and stuff while he was making the room.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yep. And also, I think it's the point where the WOD truly tells you it's about to get difficult, in my opinion. That's the what. That's the map where you're like, okay, maybe this is a hard WOD actually.
That's funny. I can see that. I think personally I would probably put that at map 15. I
Okay.
feel like Strength and Anger is the first one that really starts throwing stuff at you and just daring you to survive. That's not to say that it's all that difficult, you know, by modern standards, but that's where I feel the step up going from 14 into 15. That's when stuff gets real. But yeah, then the womb I think would be quite a bit harder than Strength and Anger, so I see where you're coming from as well.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, it's a great map set, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Um, so to, I guess, like tie into that a little bit, you tend to sort of enjoy difficult Doom mods. Is that something that you gravitate towards in other games? Like, do you generally play challenging games or not so much?
Absolutely. I think it's not necessarily looking to be challenged, but I just don't want to be bored.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this curse where so long as I'm playing something, if there is a way to have, oops, I performed badly, I made a mistake, an easily identifiable mistake that caused me to die, for example, then I kind of enter into the spiral of trying to understand why that happened and how I cannot do it again. So it doesn't matter if I'm playing Doom or Crash Team Racing or whatever I'm playing. If there's a way to get better at it observably, then that's the most enjoyment I get out of that thing is analyzing the mistakes that I'm making, any flaws in my play, which there are always plenty of, and trying to theory craft a way to get and be better. And if you're doing that just accidentally, really by circumstance, I don't mean to be doing that. I just always find myself doing it that way and playing that way, then you have to seek out harder and harder wads. You end up in this arms race of just having to eat spicier and spicier food because your mouth keeps getting tougher and you don't even want that same high, but you just want to be able to notice the level of spiciness that is in your mouth in a given meal. So it's yeah, I love Sunlust for that reason because it was a really at the time it was considered a really highly difficult wad, and I'm always playing the really hard stuff that comes out. And if it's too hard, then you back off and you come back later. I'm not looking to grind it out and have a rough time, right? I want to enjoy myself, but I just find that the it has to be considered pretty challenging for it to be engaging enough after 20 years of playing it, right? Anybody would be decent at anything after doing it for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that is true. 10,000 hours to master or whatever, they say.
Yeah, and I must be at what, like 50 to 70,000 hours of Doom by now.
That's a
I
lot.
guess Steam
It's a lot
wasn't
of
around
Doom.
to track it for me
Yeah.
all my life, but it's a lot. So even a goof like me can get half decent at something if you just never stop doing it.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start streaming on Twitch?
That was really recent, actually.
Oh,
That was something I swore I would never do. I was so convinced I would
wow.
never be able to do that because I didn't think I'd be able to get over my anxiety
Mm-hmm.
to do it. I was terrified, and it's something I didn't understand the value of. It seemed a little weird. I had only watched or heard of these really big streamers, these like who's big, these like XQC guys, and whoever just the big name is. I really don't keep up with it, but you'd go in and there's this chat, and it's just flying by at a million miles an hour, and you kind of start wondering what's the purpose of this, why type in here if nobody's going to see it. So I wasn't understanding the real benefits of this Twitch environment, and then when I finally was talked into doing it, because I'm so small and unpopular, thank God, You get to kick up a stream and you'll have what, like 15 people come by, and you can have fun conversations while you're playing a game. So it totally reoriented my perspective on it, and I realized, oh, it's basically just like I want to play a game right now and I don't want to play it alone, and I can just have some company. Some people can come by, people can bully me when I don't follow my own how to doom advice. it's it's hilarious and embarrassing, and it was a great time. But yeah, I don't think I started, again, I'm so bad with the dates, but it was just last year. It was 2022,
Oh, okay.
and it would have been for Old Still Life map 9
Well,
that I
that's pretty
would have been my
specific.
first
You don't
one.
remember the date, but
Yeah, because it became this game of I couldn't beat that map saveless. I couldn't overcome my anxiety enough to beat that map saveless. It's horrifying. Have you played Old Still Life map 9?
uh, no, I haven't actually. I can't remember.
Oh,
I might have played it
it's
in Xandra with Rubik's actually. I think maybe he wanted me to play it, and so we ran through it. But that's not exactly the true experience.
yeah, it's but yeah, you know what the Cyber Demon turret one where you're waiting in various rooms while cyber demons fire at you, and you're just trying to stay alive long enough to ride a lift or hit a switch. But in recording it privately in my office here, I just wasn't able to beat it over like 4 hours of attempts on this tiny little map.
Hmm.
I'd just be too shaky. So I put out the video that people had been kind of waiting for, which is when's the next Old Still Life playthrough coming out? And it culminated with my not being able to beat it. So then I just made this promise. I said, "Hey, won't it be fun if how about I'm going to beat it this time, but I'll do it live, and we'll do it in front of a live audience, and then I'll be even more anxious, and wouldn't that be funny?" And so that would have been the first stream. I remember it very clearly because it was terrifying, and it was like a
Oh
it
yeah.
was like a character growth experience where I survived streaming and thought, "Hey, that was a lot of fun. Maybe I can do this."
I do find that the irony of that is that I personally play about 10 times worse when I stream than when I'm
Oh yeah,
just playing.
100%. Yeah, you can't not. If you stream and you're not 10 times worse, you're a robot.
Yeah.
There's something deeply broken about you, I think. Yeah, I'll get on stream, and that was another thing I had to get used to is I just could not believe how bad I was
I mean,
playing on stream.
it was it was like when I played your map in the community project, which we'll talk about a bit later. But when I played that off stream, I think it took maybe like I want to say like 6, 7 attempts, and then on stream I just got whomped for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? Because for me, it's not even about. I'm not worried if people think that I'm bad. That's fine, and maybe I am bad. But it's just frustrating to expect a certain level of proficiency from yourself,
Yeah, I think
and
that's
then
what it is.
you're watching your own hands play the game wrong, and you're just
Yeah.
like, "Hey, listen to me. Why aren't you doing what I know to do? Why are we this bad?"
Yep,
And
that's exactly it.
it was shocking. I was already worse just recording to put things on YouTube. I was so nervous. I go back now, and if I watch, because someone mentioned it the other day, my original Augur Zenith playthrough, you can hear how carefully I'm speaking because I'm so nervous.
Well,
And
recording is like another thing, I think, where you're like, well, I can get this perfect, so I might as well get it perfect. And then you re record the same fight like 6 times.
well, that would have been smart. Where were you at the start of 2022? I would I would play the map blind privately because the goal for the playthrough was to just kind of do a walkthrough style, classic YouTube. This is where everything is.
Hmm.
Probably just doing what I'd seen Decino do, right? You are your influences. What else is there to it? But so I would play it once blind, and then I would start recording, and then I would just play the map.
Hmm.
So I always felt this immense pressure where it's like, oh my god, if I die, it's going to be in the video forever. And
Yeah.
I think miraculously made it through Augur Zenith without dying, but as soon as we moved into other wads, I was dying on camera all the time. But yeah, it was funny because I knew I was going to play worse because I was nervous, and I already played worse in recording. But on Twitch, oh my god, it was even worse than that. But it just makes for better content, I guess. If I'm terrible, you get to come by and make fun of me.
It's true, and sometimes I do. I think a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah, you are devastating.
I don't think I actually really make fun of you that much.
Well, you should.
um, you do seem to put like a decent amount of work into editing the videos down, I guess, to make them like a bit more interesting for viewing. I guess like usually just uh, cutting certain bits out so that you can maybe trim it down a little bit. What's the process like for just a let's play video?
Yeah, that was something again, I have no original ideas. I steal everything. So I was just watching Ryukar do Mario Maker runs on YouTube. And what I really liked about his style was that he would play the map blind. And then when he died, he would cut the footage until he reached the part that he died at again. So you would see the same part maybe 15 times in a row until he beat it, but you would never have to rewatch something he had already beaten.
Right.
So the clarity and the sort of narrative thread of how the level is played was preserved, and it was really easy to follow because you'd never be jumping back in time. So I started doing this process where I would people started asking for blind playthroughs on YouTube. So I basically just stole what I had seen Ryukar do because it worked so well, where I'd play the map blind, and when I died, I would because I'm playing it saveless, I'd have to play the map again, but I would cut the footage in editing to take all of that out, and you would rejoin me when I reached the fight that I died at, and we just give that another go.
Hmm.
But what was funny is that works perfectly for Mario Maker because a Mario Maker map takes like between 15 and 60 seconds to beat.
Yeah.
So it's not that much of a pain. Whereas doing like Archeon map 6, where it takes like 45 minutes to get to the end of the map, if you die in the final fight, I have to play another 45 minutes to get back there just to get that minute of video that needs to go on the end.
Hmm.
So I ended up regretting the process because it was such a pain to have to do. And then I would have these conversations with myself where I'd be like, why don't I just save off camera? I should just save off camera and the content's going to be the same. But then I would think, no, I said it was saveless, so I have to go back and do it all over again, or it's dishonest. So I would torture myself doing it. And
I guess you might
anyway,
change the feeling of it too, like uh the nervousness in your voice, or whatever it is, the nervous energy of being at the end of a map that you're gonna have to redo again.
that's exactly right, and it's ever present in those playthroughs where it'll just be me fighting one cyber demon, and it should be free. Who can't do that these days? But I'm so nervous because if I mess it up, I just lost 35 minutes of my life. I've got to go back and do this map again up to this fight. So yeah, if I had saved before that off camera, then you're right. The emotional journey wouldn't be the same. So
Hmm.
there's another reason to have done it. But yeah, it all came from just watching somebody else do blind playthroughs that way, thinking it was a fun viewing experience, and not thinking hard enough about how difficult of a recording experience that'll become when you try to translate it to gameplay that takes is up to an hour to get to a certain point in it. But yeah, people seem to enjoy it, so I guess it was all for the best at the end of the day.
Hmm. And I guess a little more recently, you moved into doing like some analytical content. Your video about monster priority. What made you want to tackle like analyzing Doom gameplay?
That was all born of just this thing that I would always be doing anyway, where I'm just sitting down after I would do something wrong in Doom specifically and try to explain to myself what was really going on there and why what I did didn't work and what I could have done differently to be quote unquote better. And sometimes I would sit down with a friend of mine, like my buddy Dave. Shout out Dave, love that guy to death. And he's not a big Doom player, but he would always entertain me where I would, we'd watch somebody else's gameplay maybe on YouTube, and I would explain to him what they're doing right at some points, right
Uh-huh.
in my opinion, of course, and what the mistakes that they're making. And we just kind of talk about gameplay that way. And that to me is the best part of the experience. That's my favorite thing, is just getting to think about stuff and crunch numbers and test experiments. So I think it was pretty early on in the channel, maybe after just about a month of deciding to put playthroughs on the channel, I did my first analysis video and then did a few more after that. But I just love thinking way too deeply about things, and I love the process for trying to break down information into its most digestible form to help the unengaged disseminate it more easily. I think that that is its own skill set. I think that
Yeah.
the best analogy I can think of is a guitar teacher I had in high school. I was venting to once because our calculus teacher was just a huge jerk, and he was obviously a smart guy who knew all the math, but students would get lost and they'd say, "Can you explain that again?" And he would say, I'm not explaining that again. Like, it's easy. You should know this. If you're not getting it, that's not my problem." And he's obviously a terrible teacher.
Uh,
But when I was yeah, it's awful, right? But
does he know what
when
a
I was
teacher is? I don't know.
I guess not. But when I was explaining that to my guitar teacher, who was a wonderful guy, he said the problem sometimes is the most knowledgeable people about any given field make the worst teachers if they never had to struggle to better understand the content. They never had a moment where they just didn't get it for 3 weeks straight and then finally, oh, I understand. They never had to go through that. It always came easily. So when other people are tripping over things, they can't help them to understand it because they don't get what's not to get.
Yeah.
So what I've always been really passionate about, and I did a bunch of tutoring all through college and I really enjoyed it, is realizing that there's knowing how to do something and then there's being able to explain how to do that thing and why it's important. And for some reason, I just find that really entertaining. So I started making these analysis videos because I just love the process of, okay, now I think I know what the lesson is to be learned here. I think I know what the advice I want to communicate is. Now to start the puzzle of trying to solve how to condense that down to 15 minutes or less and make sure that anybody can understand it, because it's a video. They can't stop it and ask me a question. I just have to make sure that the information's there. So it's just a love of explaining things, I guess. I don't know how psycho that makes me sound, but that's
No,
me.
I mean it's a big ticket item for a resume. That's what they want out there. Someone who
I
can
guess so, yeah.
break down complicated information. And I personally think that like that kind of analysis is like missing a little bit for Doom, which I mean I made a couple of like analysis videos as well, specifically for that reason. Um, so I was wondering, I mean, I'm assuming you plan on like creating a lot more content like that. Like, do you have something in the works right now?
Absolutely, all the time. It's just really this issue of how long it takes to make it when you're not very good at making it, which is me. Hi, hello. I'm terrible at
Me
the
too.
video editing process. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I have, now that I've started incorporating me on the green screen into the videos, there's this added obstacle of I'm terrified to be on that green screen, and I'll have to record the same line 16, 17 times in a row just out of nervousness because I don't trust that it's going to be a good recording of that line, and I waste all my time, and then I throw it all out and I start over from the ground up because I'm too anxious about it. But I That's my favorite content to put on the channel. I have actually decided to just not really put the playthrough videos on the channel anymore because people are already doing that and they're doing it better than I am. Right? You can go watch Dacino, he's the king of it. Or if you want to see just like ridiculous speed runs, then you could watch like, Kinetic Beverage or any of those just Chad Maxers that are ridiculous, right? We
Hmm.
don't need me. I'm not contributing.
I kind of disagree. I will say I 100% disagree because
Oh, sure.
I've
Go into that.
actually recently been saying that I think we need like more people who are just doing like casual playthrough content for Doom, because I do feel like there's been like a constant kind of angling upwards into everybody playing difficult content all the time, and that's the focus. And more delving into speedruns and all this kind of stuff, which is great, obviously. Like, it's really good content. But uh I I mean, I saw a lot of people in your comments, just people talking about your channel, who said they really enjoy like your general sort of calm attitude, and the way that you just sort of deal with situations as they come and all that stuff. And I think like that kind of relaxed environment for playing Doom is maybe something that there needs to be more of, personally. But
You
that's
know
my
what?
opinion.
That's a great point, actually. That's you may reverse my opinion on that matter. I'm sure if I sat back and we talked about that at length, you'd probably change my mind. But yeah, yeah, that's great. I'll have to think a little more about that because that's a nice way to put it. I guess the majority of the Doom playthrough content is just the crazy high octane stuff that's unattainable to the average player. So maybe we need more chumps like me just doing whatever. Um, yeah, I'll sit with that. I'll let you
But it's
I'll let
true.
you inform my opinion there.
I think there's a lot of like goal oriented stuff on YouTube too, right? Like, it's a lot of, you see in the thumbnail, it's like UV Max pistol start, hardest map yet. Like, it's real like, hey, this is the focus. The focus is on I'm completing a challenge or whatever, as opposed to, hey, I'm playing a bit of Doom today. You know.
Right, yeah, and even within that, there's different vibes, right? Because there's the Dacino vibe, which I love, which is he's including those things in the thumbnail, but it's a challenge to himself. He's not here to show off in any capacity. He's not here to demonstrate. He's here to find out if he can beat that map, saveless pistol start. But then, yeah, there's this other camp, which I also enjoy watching. But that's definitely this camp of I'm going to prove that I can do this to everybody else, or I can do it fastest, or I'm just going to collect as many of these kind of records as I can. And there's nothing wrong with that either. They're just different vibes. But
Yeah. It's not. I'm not steeping it in any kind of negativity, really. I suppose I'm just saying that when I look at Doom YouTube, or even a lot of Twitch streams, I feel like a lot of the time that is kind of the vibe.
absolutely, yeah. And I wonder if some of that just comes from like you're going to put something on YouTube and you're wondering why? What's the purpose? Like, what am I doing? So if
Yeah.
you have something you can describe about it, like it's an achievement. Like I'm the first person to get a saveless exit on this map, or I have the fastest time on this. Then that is a larger impetus to share that because it's a momentous thing instead of just the maybe casual accidental narcissism of oh well I was playing this today so I'm sure you'd love to watch that. And sometimes I get caught up in that trap where I'll be putting something on YouTube and then I'll again overthink it and I'll ask myself, why am I putting this out here? Like am I just asking people to pay attention to me? Am I deluding myself into thinking that we're here to enjoy the map? But really are there people who just want the attention? And it's just something that's always at the back of my mind that I get nervous about, where I just wonder like if I'm posting a playthrough of this map, is somebody watching that? Is that going to supplant their desire to download it and play it themselves? And have I accidentally taken away a play of some artist's creation? They didn't feel the need to play the map because they watched me do it. And,
That's a strange
sometimes,
thing to think about, I feel like.
yeah, I agree. I hear myself say it and I don't think that I'm on my side with it, but it's just thoughts that they're always flying through my head, right? As I don't want to be being a jerk anywhere I go, and sometimes I'm too cautious, and sometimes I'm not cautious enough, and I'm accidentally a jerk, and then I feel horrible about it. Um, but I just think, yeah, it's interesting that you're right that a lot of the content out there, the playthrough content, is the big achievements, and there's not a lot of just, hey, this is a neat map. Let's check this out. And so yeah, maybe there does need to be more of that, but I don't know that I'm the guy to do it. I'm not sure. What I've really been enjoying the most is the stuff that to me feels higher effort. Just for me, again, I don't mean to cast a negative light on anybody else because I'm watching all this content. I'm watching all these Dacino playthroughs. KB puts out a run on his channel. I'm watching it. So I love that content. But I just feel when I'm putting something on my YouTube, I get a little guilty about it if I don't feel like I put a lot of effort into it.
Hmm.
And it reached the point with those playthroughs where I thought, I'm just kind of kicking these out and I'm not really I didn't recognize at the time what I was contributing that was unique. The dean is making these incredible WOD reviews, these highly written, heavily edited, this incredible content, right? That nobody else is really doing. So that's the dean's contribution and you think, thank God Mount Pain 27 has a YouTube channel because now this thing exists and it wouldn't have otherwise. And I was trying to find my that. And then I discovered what you were saying earlier, which is that there's not a lot of the analysis from the play perspective. Dacino's nailing the analysis from the game engine perspective. The how do these things function under the hood? So fascinating. I love those videos. And you yourself have your breakdowns of the monster functionality kind of from a mapping perspective, right? How you would use these monsters as a mapper.
Hmm.
And I wasn't finding a ton of content on, as a player, what should you be doing? And what should you be thinking? And how should you be analyzing these things? So that's what I hoped to kind of make my niche. And I feel happiest there. I think is the answer to the question you asked maybe 25 minutes ago. I'm so
We were
sorry.
chatting. We were chatting. It's fine. That's the
Yeah.
point. That's what we're here to do.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess like I mean we talked about the editing for the Let's Play stuff, but that monster priority video has a lot of editing in it. I dread to think what the timeline looked like, honestly. But
Oh Lord.
it's got like a little custom song in there and everything. Could you talk about like the creation of that video and like how many components went into that?
Yeah. Yeah, what a nightmare. That was just the worst part is now that I've done it that way and I like it the best so far, I have to keep doing it. Oof.
That's always,
But
yeah, that is the worst part because when I upload something and I'm like, okay, I did all of this to do it, or even with mapping, like I made a map this complex, now the next map has to also be this complex or whatever.
yep, exactly. You're always trying to push the envelope, right? There's this
Hmm.
fear like, "Oh, I'll let people down if they've come to expect this level of quality from me." And suddenly you do anything less than Fractured Worlds and you feel like you failed even though Fractured Worlds was maybe the best WOD that I played in 2022. Actually, there's no maybe, it's not close. It was the best WOD I played in
Well,
2022.
big compliment, thank you.
Well, you did a phenomenal job. And I mean, I was effusive while I was playing through it on stream and you were dropping by
That
that
was a
I
very
was enjoying it.
enjoyable playthrough to watch. Yeah, I think I already said this, but I felt like you played through each like encounter how I pictured them being played through, kind of, I suppose.
Yeah, which speaks to how uncreative I am, but I'm the perfect playtester, I guess. Just doing exactly what you want me to do. But yeah, no, excellent work on that. And I get where you're coming from. And yeah, I have the same fear that I want to put out another how-to Doom and I don't want it to look like the Revenant's video because
Yeah,
I look back on that and I think I didn't do a very good job at all with that comparatively. So I want it to be more like the Monster Priority one. And yeah, I've signed myself up for some big stuff. And if I'm being honest with myself, we're probably looking at 2 to 3 of those per year, right? If I can
right.
manage it. But yeah, the timeline, to answer the timeline question, I mean, it was 9 or 10 layers tall at various points where there's just like Doom footage, sometimes doubled up Doom footage. There's the green screen, there's any text elements, pictures and visual aids and things, lots of animations, just anything I thought was kind of cute at the time. Because as I was writing it, I didn't want to write any comedy for it. I, as a hobby, am a comedy writer, but I'm thinking I'm making an educational video. I don't want to sit down and write jokes for it. I'm not going to extend the length of this video by writing jokes. But in the editing process, as I was discovering things that I thought were funny, I would include them because they're tickling me. But there was no drive to be funny. But as I'm going through it, yeah, I'm finding just a bunch of things where I realize, oh, this is accidentally very funny, and I'll just highlight it
Yeah.
with some visual, and then that ends up being an hour of your time. The whole video probably
Uh-huh.
took like over 100 just man hours to make, mostly because I'm bad at that sort of thing and very slow, and I'm always having to Google how to do something. But yeah, it was all discovery. It was all just every step of the way thinking, "Oh, you know what? This it was funny that I recorded just but why 17 times in a row. So why don't I make fun of myself for that because I genuinely did it, and I'll just show 4 of them in the same video. And I'll show the moment where I got mad at myself because I'd said it so many times and it still didn't sound good to me. And just injecting yourself into it. But that song, the little How to Doom song, I had just found on my phone that I recorded with the very famous Dave, I've already mentioned once,
Hmm.
my good buddy Dave. And we had recorded that song idea years earlier on just a phone, on a chair in a room, and an electric drum kit plugged into a monitor and an electric guitar, but just all clean with no effects on it. Just so we would remember rhythmically and melodically what the song idea was. So then I find that on my phone and I go, I love the energy of this. I love the ba da chicka da da chicka ba ba da da da. It was fun. So I thought that's my How to Doom theme. Threw it into my audio editor, sang the words How to Doom over it, and then just blasted it with reverb until you hopefully couldn't tell that it sounded terrible. Because I didn't have it in me to record a better version of it. I didn't have the instruments around, and I wasn't gonna not do it. Wasn't gonna not incorporate that idea. So I just did the crappiest version of it possible. And hopefully it's funny. I don't know. It's pretty bad.
I thought it was good. I enjoyed it,
uh, thank you.
despite your
Thank you.
self-deprecation. Uh,
It's a yeah, it's not I mean, I'm not self-deprecating just to deprecate. I genuinely am deeply ashamed of all that I am and do.
well, you shouldn't
But
be.
thank you.
Uh,
Well, that's sweet of you to say.
so I was gonna ask you if you had any experience with, like acting or film. Like, I feel like the editing and there's clearly like an ability to talk confidently and some element of like script writing that you must have done in the past. It felt like for that video.
Yeah, a lot of writing. Probably my mainstay hobby is as a writer.
Hmm.
I've written a lot of like comedy pilots and things that will never get made, and I'm not looking to get made. I enter competitions all the time, and I can't give you more information than that because I feel like well, just be leaking, my name basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be the main thing. And then as far as like acting and other film stuff goes, I've never wanted to be a part of that, but I always find myself having to do it because you'll write a sketch and then you're filming it with your friends and you'll realize, oh, who's gonna play the mailman? And suddenly I have to play the mailman, and I'm terrified. So I've done a
Always
lot
the
of that in my
mailman.
life. Always the mailman, never the bride.
I was gonna
And
say never the bride.
and yeah, so it's just out of necessity. I do have a bit of experience being in front of a camera and trying to deliver a line properly, but I'm just my skin crawls every time I do it. It's not what I like to do. I'd much rather be behind camera. If I had the money to be running this YouTube channel and doing these how to dooms and hiring actors and editors, you would never see me again. I would be totally behind the scenes. I'd
For
be a
the
ghost.
worst. For the
Yeah.
worst.
Oh, thank you.
Uh,
That's I disagree, but I appreciate it.
so another sort of interesting thing on your YouTube channel is that you made a Doom launcher, apparently. Uh,
Yeah.
you talk a bit about that.
Yeah. I can tell by your use of the word apparently that you've never used it and would never touch it
Well,
with a 40-foot pole, which I respect.
you got to understand, if I'm not loading a WOD with command prompt manually, I'm loading it by dragging and dropping the files that I need onto it. So I do it in a pretty terrible way. I've never used it too much. I never intend to, but for everyone else out there, this may be for you.
Right. And if your car doesn't have a stick shift, it's just not even worth driving, like that kind of
No, I'm
thing.
not that kind of person at all, really. I don't know why, but I've always loaded Doom out with a command prompt, and for some reason, you know, I'm an 80-year-old man in that one aspect of my life.
Yeah, and it probably just it's habit at this point, right? Why change? It doesn't bother you in your day to day, so
Well,
it's not a
I
problem.
don't like batch files. I guess I never liked that process. It felt way more clunky to me because I'm so used to command prompt. It's very easy for me. Uh, I don't know.
Right.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of reasons why I don't. Also, like my folders are really disorganized, and I intend to keep it that way. There are a lot of reasons.
That's funny. I was a batch file guy, and I jump around a lot between wads all the time. So rather than rewriting the same batch file, I would have like 25 in a folder. And if I want to play Old Still Life, I click the Old Still Life batch file and so on and so forth. And one day I just realized, like, wait a minute, I am a programmer. I hate this. Why am I doing it every day? There have been days where I didn't play Doom because I thought, oh, I have to write a batch file, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
So I
right.
just decided.
See, this is why batch files suck. You heard it here first.
I mean, I'm lazy enough that even having to write the command prompts, I would bail. I'd be like, "F this, dude. I'll just go write some poetry instead."
That's
But
fair.
yeah, it's just I realized that I could write a launcher. It wouldn't take more than maybe an afternoon, and then I'd never have to do this again. So, yeah, I wrote this crappy launcher in like ancient .NET and got it all working. And then as I was using it, I think I was talking to Bread. Love Bread, by the way, great dude. And he was complaining about batch files, maybe. And I said, "Oh, I have this launcher. You can use mine." And so it ended up just being Bread and I using it for a while. And then it ended up just working well enough that I thought, you know what? I could probably just release this. It's a small scale enough thing. It wouldn't take me more than a couple weeks to test and prepare for public consumption because you have to be so careful with that. You can't just hand out your crap if you want to be a good dude. So I worked on it extensively just to make sure that I'd caught like every possible failure case so no one would be inconvenienced and then put it out. And yeah, a lot of people seem to like it. And the design, I guess the more interesting thing is the design aim of it was just to have it be as simple as possible
Hmm.
because you can get ZDL and it's way better, right? It does everything. It does everything. But it's also kind of hard to learn. And I've tried to cultivate this YouTube channel of being supportive of brand new players. I want to help you play the game better. I want to have a little tutorial for how do I even play Doom? You know, I wasn't around in the 90s and I'm not tech savvy. What do I do? What's a batch file? What do you mean run it from a command prompt? That doesn't can't I just click it in Steam? So I realized there might be that obstacle where how I won't write a batch file one day because I'm too lazy. Someone might not play Doom at all because they're intimidated by this ZDL launcher stuff and what's DOSBox and what's Jeezy Doom and what am I doing? So I realized I just wanted to write a little UI. It's all it is. It's a glorified string builder. It's nothing. It's a trivial project, but it just lets you hit check boxes. You want no monsters? Just check the box. You don't have to type anything. You click Doom 2, you click Ultraviolence, and you click Go. And, just to simplify that process. And it was just, yeah, it's just fun. Sometimes I'm lazy in the programmer way where I will do something incredibly efforted and time consuming if it means I don't have to do something else that's maybe even less efforted or time consuming later.
Hmm.
Like when I have the energy, I will front load the task so that it's easy later. and the math I don't think works out on that, but it feels better.
Yeah. I mean, I do hear that a lot about programmers, where it's I can't remember what's that little This is one of those moments where I forget the name, and then you don't know the name, and then we come to nothing on this. But there are those
Oh
little,
god.
they're like these little boxes you can get that are just for doing simple programming things, and a lot of people use them just to like handle some little minute day-to-day task or something for them.
Little are you talking about like Scratch?
No, I'll cut this out.
Little boxes. No, don't cut it out.
No,
Don't cut it out.
I
My
knew
whole
this is what would
vibe,
happen there. I really
my whole
knew.
vibe is exactly this. You have to leave in I thought Ancient Aliens was my first major P1,
Oh,
even though I
wait,
played it
wait, wait.
after my favorite.
I think
Have you
it's
got it?
called Raspberry. Is it Raspberry Pi? Raspberry something?
Oh, you mean like a physical box?
I believe so.
I see. I was picturing. Yeah, Raspberry Pi is a very small computer that you can
Yeah.
just, put little programs of your own creation on and do a bunch of stuff with it. It's just a small computer. It's basically nothing else.
Yeah. Well, that was what
Yeah.
I was thinking of.
I see. When you said boxes, I thought like drag and drop boxes and a UI, and I was like coding with drag and drop boxes, and then I pictured like that programming language for kids where you're like it's called Scratch and there's a little cat that you can move around.
yeah, that's what I was talking
But
about. Yeah.
oh,
Okay, well, we got there in the end for no real benefit. But
yeah.
um, one thing that is sort of really great about your Twitch channel is the Twitch Plays Doom little segments that you do, where you'll get the chat to contribute to the stream by using certain commands that directly force your player character to do things in game. Things like, like firing your gun, and like, I don't know, they can activate an invuln if they want to help you, or remove the invuln immediately, which people tend to do. They can even make you jump and stuff. Did this idea just sort of stem from, the other Twitch plays that had occurred, and you thought it would function well for Doom?
Eventually, yeah, but the initial idea came from I am so bad at Doom when I'm streaming that I would frequently forget what guns I have, where keys where I'd get completely lost, and I would make something really hard for myself, and then chat would have to be like, "Why are you not using the BFG you have 600 cells for?" And I'd go, "Oh shoot, do I have a BFG? My bad." So then uh, it was this thought of, man, it would be nice if chat could just pull out my BFG for me, and
Mm-hmm.
then they don't have to suffer, I don't have to suffer. And then the realization, yeah, exactly as you said. Wait, people have done these things before where Twitch interacts with the game they're playing. And then I thought, that sounds like a fun thing to try to build. I'd never made a chat bot before. I hadn't done a lot of like talking to like connecting to API endpoints and sending information back and forth. And I didn't know what internet relay chat protocol was. So it ended up just being a super fun experience to learn how to do this as I built it. And yeah, to try and build a little bot that would just hang out in my Twitch chat and listen for when people would type in commands or redeem channel points maybe for those commands. And then since I'm an agent of chaos, I thought, well, if I'm going to do this so they can help me, I have to let them hurt me as well. And started putting in silly stuff like they can bring up my auto map to blind me
That's my
or make
favorite
me
one, I
jump.
think.
Oh, it's Bread's favorite is just turning off auto run.
That's a good one, yeah.
The first stream we did, Bread, the turn off auto run only cost like 100 channel points or something, maybe even less, maybe like 50. And Bread spent thousands upon thousands of his channel point backlog just toggling off my run at the worst moments.
It's
It's
very
uh
good.
it's
That and
amazing how much that
the
kills you.
spin while you have a rocket launcher is always good. The 180-degree
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah, exactly. I'll never use the 180 key genuinely, but I'll let chat use the 180 key to murder me when I've got my back against the wall and I'm trying to rocket a horde of revenants or something. It's good fun, and I think it's a little match made in heaven because my temperament is such that I like when people rib me. That's RIB. That's rib. Um, and I like getting bullied. I think it's all part of the learning experience, and I just like the chaos. So people can come in, and I'll be like, "Hey, I'll try and beat the first 10 maps of Ancient Aliens, and you try to stop me." And it can go horribly wrong for me, and I still enjoyed that. I don't get frustrated by it. I'm laughing the whole time because I just can't believe what people are teaming up to achieve. The fact with the stream delay, the fact that I could die and then someone will save state uh while I'm in the death animation, so I'm stuck and I have to restart the map.
Yep,
It's just beautiful. It's so funny when that stuff comes together.
brutal. There were some pretty brutal moments for sure. Um,
Oh yeah.
and like, have you thought since about like things you might want to do to expand on that initial premise? I know you were talking about trying to maybe make the bot available to other streamers at some point.
Yeah, that's something that I'm always thinking about. I always think, "Hey, I just made this thing for me and I'm enjoying it, so why not let other people use it?" But it is a very I think people underestimate how difficult it is to make something consumer ready.
Yep.
It's really, really difficult. And so, since this is something that I was experimenting with the whole way, I would just sit down one day and read the entire Internet Relay Chat protocol to be like, what is this and what does it mean? And how do I use this to like connect to Twitch chat from not Twitch? And to get it to a point where it's ready for someone who's less tech savvy than me, which is saying something, to use it without issue is a tall order. So I made that Twitch Plays Doom bot in 3 sittings, but to make it publicly available, I would probably need to set aside a few months of free time here and there to just make it bulletproof,
Hmm.
just completely bulletproof. So it's something that I would love to release at some point, but it's nowhere near happening at the moment. Because first of all, I'm not finished designing it for my own purposes. There's other features we might like to give it, so it's still in development. And then when I'm done designing it so that I can use it safely, it's going to take a long time to get it ready for other people to use safely.
Yep. Uh,
So yeah,
yeah, I would imagine that the testing process would be a challenge for something like that, especially anything that you're dealing with that's, you know, online based must be a real challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And I skipped all my networking classes in college.
Oh
every
no.
every single one. I was so bored. And I'm just not a web dev. That's not my environment.
Hmm.
So I had a buddy helping me out a lot where I'd get stuck and I just couldn't figure out what was going on, and I'd just call my friend and he would come by and then we'd put our heads together on it. But yeah, it's surprising if you even just that Doom launcher, it looks like what could possibly go wrong with that. But you have to think about things like, what if somebody chooses the source port? They're like, I'm playing with the SDA Doom, so they hook that up. And then right before they hit play, they go and delete GZ Doom or DSDA Doom, or they move it to a different folder.
Hmm.
Like, why would anybody do that? You would think they wouldn't. But if they do, then they're going to get a weird bug. And then they're going to come knocking on your door like, hey, your launcher's not working. What happened? So you have to predict the human behavior. If you're going to be your own QA department, you have to say, what could anybody feasibly ever do in a weird order or that makes no sense that could break something? And then I have to make sure that it's not breakable in that way. So
Yeah.
it's really, really difficult. So when you're looking at a Twitch bot where you're like, getting OAuth tokens and authenticating like your account, and then you've got to run this Twitch bot account and then make that easy to use for your average person. It's just a huge nightmare. So it's not something I'm ruling out. It's something I'd love to do, but no time soon for sure,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Uh, so to move into different terrain a little bit, I wanted to talk about your map in Balls of Steel Community Project. Um, I guess I was curious, why do you think that map focuses so heavily on like incredibly tight setups with like little room for error?
Well, um
Because
That's an
fundamentally,
interesting
that
question.
seems like the core of like the gameplay for the map, in my opinion.
Uh, the intention was to have it be a set piece map of this moment, and then you're done, and then this moment, and then that's done, and then the next moment, etc.
Hmm.
Which is my favorite type of map. I want you to hold my hand because remember, I'm not an atmosphere guy.
Yeah.
I just like the arcadey action. So hold my hand and take me fight to fight, and then I've defeated the map. I don't want to go on a scavenger hunt, please. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then just as I was building these fights, sometimes I would set them up to challenge me. The starting platform with the revs was designed to challenge me because my sense of space is terrible and my movement is not good. So you put me in that situation and I die all the time just by running off the edge.
Hmm.
So that was designed to, if I'm going to demo this map, I'll just have to learn to have better movement and sense of space. So it was very rewarding to reach a point where I could beat that fight not only 80% of the time, but most of the time you don't even take damage because I'm finally not running off the edge.
Hmm.
But then there were other ones that I put in that I thought were reprieves. The Caco Demon fight, which now seems almost infamous among really, really talented players who have tried that fight. To me, that was the easiest fight by far. And I wanted it to be that way. I wanted it to be fun and busy, but not hard. So when I designed it, I set up these arch files that you have to hide from as you move left and right. You're constantly under attack, and then gave you the rocket launcher. And while you're doing that, you have to hold back this crowd of cacodemons. It's just a classic fundamental game design of I ask you to do two things that aren't very difficult, but at the same time. And suddenly it's very busy. But as I did it, I'd sit down and play the fight for the first time and go, okay, I like the idea, but this is obviously way too easy because you don't even have to like hide from anything. And I'd buff it and buff it and buff it. And I just never got it to a point where it was killing me with any kind of consistency. And I started getting nervous about it. And then I handed it in an early version into the Balls of Steel Discord to have play tested, and the feedback was coming back like, "Isn't the difficulty a little absurd?" And that was just taking me completely by surprise because I'm wondering, what are you struggling with? And then you'd watch people play it and you'd go, oh, they're doing this Kako fight completely wrong, which is interesting. And it seems kind of sinister almost how easy it is to do that wrong and think that you're doing it right. And I'm talking for too long, but the point I'm trying to make is that fight, I think, frequently gets identified as having no room for error. And I think it's the opposite. I think you can play it sloppy as all get out and still be fine if your strategy is correct from the start. And the vast majority of otherwise really talented players, better than me easily, are doing is they're getting into this fight and they're just doing the wrong strategy right at the start, ever so slightly. So that strategy is maybe never going to win unless they play like a god. So since they're dying all the time, they're thinking, I feel like I get it. I feel like I'm doing the right thing, but I'm not surviving. So this you just must have to play perfectly. But it's actually that if you have the proper strategy, it's it's not that hard to do, I think, comparatively, and there is a lot of freedom. But it's just tricky to identify that small mistake that you're making, strategically speaking. But I guess the point is just that as far as game design always goes, whatever you think is the hard part just never seems to be the hard part, and what you think is the easy part never seems to be the easy part. Um,
I think
but
it's
that fight was fascinating to see people react to.
yeah, I think it's pretty common. I mean, when you make something yourself, I don't know. Sometimes it's not even so much about knowing, oh, this is what's gonna happen in the fight or whatever, but you understand it on a more fundamental level, and there are fights that you can just do, and you think they're totally fine, and then you put them out, and people are just getting absolutely decimated by them, and it's like And yeah, it'll be like really good players. Like I had fights in like entropy and stuff. I think where I was like, yeah, this is fine, and then like Ankalagon would play it, and he'd be like, oh, I think this is a bit hard or whatever, and I'm like, well, it must be if Ankalagon is saying it's too hard. You have to get. I think like for me, I had to get to a point where I'm like, if if someone like this is telling me the fight is too difficult, then I need to maybe look at it again, because the blind players that are gonna look at are gonna play this fight are not Ankalagon. So
That's right. That's a great
yeah.
point. And it's like, does it matter whether or not it's hard if it's being consistently interpreted as too hard, right? Is that its own problem? And
Or
that
is it
might,
like, am I trying, like, do I want this fight, which is fine. Do I want this fight to be, you have to do it this way, otherwise it's excruciatingly difficult, which is totally fine way to design a fight, but you have to ask yourself the question of like, should I make it a one strategy fight, or should I make it a fight that's like open to interpretation by the player so that they can find their own way to beat it, kind of thing.
great point. Great point. And that's probably the Achilles heel of that Cacodemon fight is I built it around a specific task. I expect the player to do this in this way. And if you don't do that in that way, then you get blown out essentially every time. So it then makes sense to watch very good players, go in and die dozens to hundreds of times in a row at this short fight because they don't know that they're doing something fundamentally wrong, and there's not much about the fight that's communicating that you're doing something fundamentally wrong except that you're dying. But again, the conclusion that you could come to is I'm dying because I didn't quite do it well enough. And so that would be my mistake then as the mapper, where I'm just thinking the solution is easier to find than it is maybe. And which is goes back into exactly what we were saying before is I as a teacher, right? I never struggled with that fight because I knew what it was from the beginning. So I didn't get what's not to get. So then to watch Dan struggle with that fight is confusing until you realize, "Oh, I didn't even think about it, but people are trying to do it this way, and on the surface that makes
Yeah.
sense,
I mean, it
but it won't
consistently
work."
happens, yeah. The more you make stuff and the more people test it for you, you will test it 100 times and it will be consistent, and it will seem like the fight A works, and B plays the way you think it will play. Even if you're trying to play it in a different way yourself during testing, as soon as you put it out to someone who isn't you, you will you will pretty much always get like a different result. People will
Yeah.
like and a lot of the time it's not even a skill thing. I remember there's a secret fight in map 2 of Fractured Worlds. I think Gazebo beat that fight in like one attempt, and then Zol got like he took ages to beat it. Like it took him a whole bunch of attempts. And obviously, I mean, I'm not calling Gazebo out or anything, but Zol is a slightly better player. But just due to the way that they both wanted to approach it individually, they ended up like having a different experience with the fight. So I mean, there are just so many variables in testing, and when you watch people play your stuff, and you really have to like, I feel like you have to get as many perspectives on a fight as possible when you do your testing.
Yeah, and I love that we have in the Doom community some players that are just so obviously phenomenal at the game that just watching them struggle with something is an almost like objective statement about it's being probably too difficult to be
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable, like almost always. So when I'm uh when you design something and then like yeah, Zool struggles with it, or Vile struggles with it, or Dan struggles with it, right? You're just like, obviously something is amiss here because if these players can't do it within a dozen tries, then who's going to be able to do this at all? Is it even fun? But then I guess it comes down to an interesting question, which is up to each mapper about each fight. And that's, is the challenge supposed to be in doing, or is the challenge supposed to be in solving? Is it supposed to be hard to figure out what to do and then easy to do it? or is it supposed to be easy to figure out what to do and then hard to do it? And I think with that Cacodemon fight in particular in Oh Grape, um, I think it's I didn't mean for this. I made a mistake. I've messed up, but it ended because I thought it would be easy to figure out and easy to do. It turns out it's pretty surprisingly difficult to figure out, but then I think easy to do once you know. And I think the proof in that is that yeah, people will die 100 times in a row, and then it clicks, and suddenly they play it four more times and they beat it three out of those four times.
Hmm.
So that tells me that it's not actually hard to do, but maybe it was accidentally too hard to figure out. And personally, with that fight, I'm comfortable with that because of how consistent it is after you figure it out. But I think that people are correct to call out, "Hey, this might be too difficult," because it's just not obvious that you don't have the correct solution. Whereas sometimes it is. Sometimes you do something wrong in a fight, and you go, "Well, obviously it wasn't that." And in that
Hmm.
Kako fight, you don't have that moment. It
Well,
just doesn't seem like there's a lot of room to play.
mhm. I will say that none of what I was saying is, even though we were initially talking about that fight, none of that was commentary on your fight. Realistically, I tend to do a thing where I will just start musing, more generally about you know the concepts in general without necessarily talking specifically about that. I would never say to someone, unless I think it's like really a big problem, I'm always going to be like, here are my thoughts, but objectively speaking, you obviously don't have to change anything, you know?
But I mean, from my perspective, I mean, your commentary would be welcome, and I think it's important to recognize your betters, or at least at the very bare minimum, the people who are more experienced than you. So you are an accomplished mapper. This is my first map I've ever put out. So if you just come along and you offer no explanation and you were to just say, I don't think this is very good, you should change it. I mean, I feel like that would be maybe good enough reason to just take another look and maybe change it. In my opinion, I don't have to agree, and obviously, it'd be better if you would actually articulate why. But there just comes a point where you've seen so much of this and you've done so much of this that it would be crazy for me to, let's say, hear through the grapevine, oh, Nirvana thinks that that fight's not very balanced. I would immediately be wanting to
Mm.
quiz you on that so that I know, because I want to find out what I did wrong. My
I think
default position would
if
be
I
that I
were to
must have done
ever
something wrong.
make like a comment like, I don't think this is good, you should change it, it would nearly always be about something like, you put obstructive geometry around in the fight that the player can get caught on, and it makes movement like uncomfortable. And I would always add the addendum, if that's intended, that's fine. Like, if there's intentionality behind one of these things, I may disagree with it, but that's totally fine. But if there's no intentionality, and the geometry is just there for aesthetics, and the player happens to be getting caught on it, and it's making the fight feel awkward and less fun to play, then it's something I would say consider changing, you know? But I would say that if whenever there's intentionality involved, I'm always going to say it's up to you whether to change it or not, I guess.
I love that. I agree completely. I would. I mean, I'm not qualified to be giving advice on mapping, other than like from what I know that I like as a player. But I think that's the best way to look at it. Right? As this thing is really annoying, but that's not necessarily bad unless the intention is not to have it be annoying. Then a
Exactly,
mistake
yeah.
has been made. Yeah. I just like now I'm musing, so I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. I'm just realizing how clumsily I explained something a minute ago. But I just mean to say that um yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about offering commentary, even very negative commentary on something that I had ever done, and I would hope that no one would have to worry about doing that for anybody's anything. I would hope, perhaps naively, that we're all in it to learn and to get better. And one of the quickest ways to get better is to find out what you've definitely done incorrectly or unpleasantly, and to fix that. So you can come along anytime and you can say, "Hey, SoBad, I played your map and I think you got a real problem in this fight, and I'm all ears." Like I just you anybody who's coming in who has made excellent maps, you obviously are going to have an informed opinion, even if you're values don't line up with mine. We have a difference in opinion, but you're going to have information that I may not have considered.
Mm.
So
Well, yeah.
I
I suppose my
yeah.
maybe my what I'm saying is more about how the critique itself is expressed, I guess. But
Yeah, you wanna be gentle, you wanna be constructive.
well, yeah,
Absolutely.
constructive, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
used to like I did writing at uni, and a lot of that was like, you know, you go in and you can say like the grammar's incorrect here, whatever. You might want to do this to flesh out this character or whatever, but you never openly and actively make suggestions as to what should happen in the story. Like, I think this character should, you know, be paired up with this character because I felt like they would be good together or whatever. Like, that's not really useful feedback because it's not your story, kind of thing.
I agree completely, and I would even extend that to say that you don't necessarily have to draw the line at only the objective matters, like the grammar and syntax and things, but you should be also able to come along and say, "Hey, I wasn't understanding why this character made this decision in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that wasn't gelling, but you're right, I don't think you go the extra step and say they should have done this instead, or you
Yeah.
should make them do this,
Yeah.
but just
Exactly.
identifying, even subjectively, here's what wasn't working for me and why I think it wasn't working. But it's up to you to decide if you care enough to solve that, if it's even a problem, and if so, how to solve it.
Yeah, and I think for mapping it's the same, or game design in general. I would suppose it's like I do think that as a mapper, you reach a point, and you should reach a point where you have certain things that you're just not gonna change. Uh, and when I give like testers my maps, I'll be like, I want you to take a look at this and this, like these aspects of it, and they might give me feedback on a particular fight and say, oh, I thought this was bad or whatever, and I'll take that into consideration. But if it's a fight that I'm like, I know this is good and I'm not gonna change it, then I won't change it, kind of thing. I think you should always have those elements where you're confident enough in yourself that you're a little unflinching. But I think that comes with experience, and it's not good advice for someone who's new to doing something.
Yeah, it's an interesting point and a very dangerous balance. You're right. You
Hmm.
need to learn to recognize your own worth, your own value, the value of specific ideas that you've put forth. There are things that you just, I believe in this and I think that it is fun or it is interesting, at least to me. And you don't have to compromise on that. But there's definitely a process to getting to the point where you can rely on your own taste more. And in the early stages of any artistic endeavor, you just aren't going to know what you're talking about. You're not going to know how to do things. So if you're not receptive to criticism, even very harsh criticism, then you're just not going to get better. And the worst part is if you are getting the haunches up and correcting people when they're giving you feedback and they're like, I don't think they could, even if you think it's bad feedback, like, I don't think this is fun. And you're like, well, you're wrong. It's super fun. Then you're
Hmm.
just training people to not be honest with you because they say, "Oh, the last time SoBad asked for my opinion on something and I gave it, I kind of he kind of bullied me for it, or he rejected it, or he got mad."
Hmm.
So then people decide, "I'll just I'll do the quote unquote kindness of lying to you about how good or bad your thing is." And then you have lost an avenue toward getting better at that thing.
Yeah, I think
So,
you have to be
yeah,
pretty clear about I want feedback on this, but not so much on this. A lot of the time.
yeah, if that's the case, if you can tell about yourself, if you have that a stark maturity of, you know what, I don't think I could handle negative feedback about this particular facet, or I just know that whatever they say, I'm not going to take the advice because I think it's perfect, then I guess that's a boon because you know that about yourself. But I would still worry that you have that in you. And I would think that you should ask yourself, why and is it healthy that I'm not willing to hear um, contrarian opinions on this particular thing? Why am I so invested in it? I hate this idea This is the worst way to ask for feedback on anything, and I see it all the time.
Hmm.
You'll post your painting, for example,
I
and you'll
do, yeah.
say, "Here's a painting I painted. How did I do?" Don't phrase it like that because now it's about you. And anything they say that's not great is an admonishment of you as an artist. Instead, you need to put the painting on the easel at the other side of the room, and you need to stand with the people whose feedback you're getting shoulder to shoulder, and you're all looking at the same thing, and you need to ask questions like, what could have been done better here? How could this function better or be more affecting, etc.? Make it about the art. Don't make it about you. I worry that you'll never be as good as you could be if you are personally involved in the feedback process for your art. I think you need to want it to be better so strongly that you don't care if you get caught in the crossfire or you remove yourself from the crossfire completely. But if you're standing there holding your own painting, like, did I do a good job? Then you're setting yourself up for just negative emotions and you're not gonna take the feedback. You can't.
Yeah, it's like the sometimes people be playing my maps on stream, and I'll like not want to say anything in chat because then it changes the experience a little bit. It's always like kind of fun to see what people say when they think you're not there.
Yeah, I was watching I was watching Meowgi play my map and love Meowgi. He's been so great and so helpful, so many different ways. But it was funny because once I made myself, I was watching for a bit, and he had been grinding against the Kako fight for a while, and was starting to be articulative about the things that he wasn't enjoying about it. And then when I made myself known, he was definitely walking that back because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. He didn't want to be unkind. And I think that's so sweet, but I also think that it's just really counterproductive to the whole process of making and improving art. But obviously, anybody who does that is trying to be kind and has probably had bad experiences in the past where they've said, "Oh, I don't think I really like this," and then the person gets really offended.
Well,
But
perhaps also it's a realization on the person's part that they're not necessarily giving useful feedback there, you know? Like if I'm in a state where I'm pounding my head into a fight, I'm not mentally in the correct position to be telling somebody anything about that fight, usually, if I'm having a bad time. But when I finish it and I've had a bit of time to process, I will usually be a lot more reasonable and I'll be like, well, actually, these elements of the fight were pretty cool, but I struggle with this bit or I didn't like this bit. But in the throes of it, you know, you're probably just going to be like, this sucks. This is bad. Which that's not helpful. Like, it's not useful to anybody. So,
you're right. That's a great point. Thank you. It would have been a tragedy if you hadn't interjected with that, I think. Because yeah, you're right. Sometimes it's the responsibility of the person giving the feedback to understand if they're giving analytical feedback or emotional feedback and how helpful it's going to be.
I've seen some
That's
pretty terrible feedback people have given to new mappers specifically. I was involved in, sort of vaguely involved as a tester in a project, and this one person was just like, some new mapper had made like their first map. They thought it was really good. I played it, and admittedly, like there were a lot of problems with it or whatever. But this other guy was like, "Well, this map is like, it like single-handedly drives down the quality of the whole project." Like, and I was like,
Oof.
"Jesus, dude! Like, you are useless. Like at this. Like that is not gonna make this person improve in any way. Like, I don't know. Just there are people who should not be giving feedback to other people. I think at the same time.
That's so funny. I agree with you, but I also, as funny as it is, that's the person that I want giving me feedback, so long as they can articulate why they think that map ruins the entire WAD. I think you're right. There are better ways to deliver feedback, and you're probably just going to crush somebody if you are just being mean like that. But for me, I love the people who don't hold back as long as they can actually
But I think you're
explain.
mistaking holding back. Like you say that, oh, they don't hold back, so it's more truthful than the person who tries to articulate things in a different way, which I don't think is correct.
Oh no, 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 no. But I see why you, I see how you heard that. But I'm sorry. What I mean is just that there's not, they're not including in the calculation a concern for the person's feelings, which again, I agree with you is shitty in almost all contexts. I just think that for me personally, in my special little world, I love those people giving me feedback as long as when I ask, why do you think it's the worst thing you've ever played and I should die? They can explain that. That's all I'm looking for
They
because the,
usually can't do that kind of person. That's
yeah,
the
and
problem.
that is often true, I think, and that's a problem. But if they can, that's why I'm really stressing that addendum as much as I can. If they can, then I love having that person play my stuff because I was very lucky. My very famous friend Dave, who I just can't stop talking about, he my whole life has been that for me. We met in kindergarten and we've been best friends since
Just
kindergarten.
imagining him berating you in kindergarten, like.
And that's what happened is Dave seemed to either not have an interest in going easy on you or in filtering what he was saying, or he just paid you the respect of not, I don't know. But I would ask him, like, it'd be first grade, and I'd say, hey, do you want to hang out after school? And he'd go, no. And when you hear that, that crushes you at first because no one else would do that. People they would lie. They truly they just don't want to hang out. They're having a bad day. They're like, I don't really want to hang out. But what they'll say is, "Oh, I'm busy today," right? It's to protect your feelings. And Dave wouldn't do that. And he never did that. And once I got over this obstacle of, wait a minute, Dave says he doesn't want to hang out and I think he hates me, but then we're still friends the next day. I realized, oh, he's just being completely forthcoming with me. And he
I've
started becoming my rock that I would write a song on guitar and I'd say, what do you think of this? And he'd be like, honestly, no. And then he could articulate why, which is great, but he's not going to be like, oh yeah, I like it, but I like this one even better, right? He'd just go, no, chuck that one in the trash. That's no good. And I don't have to agree with him, but I love to get that from him. So I have been trained from almost birth to deal with that and incorporate that feedback. So I love
uh,
it,
I just
even
find
though
it
I think
very
you're right.
funny that your entire worldview has been shaped by a man named Dave.
Dave is my hero. He's, yeah, I don't know what I would have done
He's your Buddha,
without the guy.
really.
But it's great. You just, I having had that in my life, I can't imagine not having it. And I try to be that for other people. I try to because not everybody's used to it. I try to speak a little more carefully when I give negative feedback. But if you come to me and you say, no bullshit, I just want to know, do you love this? Do you hate it? Do you think it's the worst? Why? Just tell me. I will just tell you. And because I think that we should all have that option. It makes me uncomfortable that most people will lie to you. Do these pants look good on me? And anyone who thinks they care about you will be like, yeah, of course, you're rocking those, but you're not. You look terrible in those pants. Go get some new pants.
But why would I go to you when I could cut out the middleman and go straight to Dave?
Well, Dave's in high demand. You know, you got to make an appointment. I think he's booked till June,
And
actually.
you're just
So
a simulacrum, really, at this point. One.
that's exactly right. I'm a poor facsimile of
Mm.
Dave. I pale in comparison.
I want
But
the
yeah.
platonic ideal, Dave himself.
But you're right. I agree. I think the person that you brought up in that story was probably being unkind and unhelpful. I just
Well, look,
also
my
think
thing
that
is, I
there's a place for
think
that.
they were making the feedback about themselves. They were like, how can I express to you how intelligent I am about doom
Right.
mapping that I can just shit all over you because I know so much more than you? And at that
Right.
point, the feedback's automatically useless to me because it's not about the map anymore. It's about them, which I don't need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're just taking the opportunity to feel superior,
And this
in that
person was
style.
like a brand new mapper, like just starting out. It's like that is the worst point to be given that kind of feedback because they might just never do it again. you know. So,
Oh, of course, and you have to grade it on a curve, right? You have to say that as for a first map, where is this? How far along is this?
mhm,
What feedback does it need? And if someone specifically requests, don't give me first map feedback, give me this is my magnum opus feedback, then that's the appropriate time to do it. But you also have to understand that you can't say, oh, well, this is worse than every Rubik's map I've ever played, so therefore it's garbage. When,
mhm.
like, why could it ever be that good if it's somebody's first map? So there's always a little bit of strategic dishonesty going on, but it's all behind the aim of being as helpful as possible. So there's that too. But I just think the perfect critique is somebody who will tailor it to your needs and not hold back and give you exactly what you need.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree that that guy just sounds like an ass. Let's be honest.
Oh, I agree. But anyway, after this 4 hour tangent, let's get back on track. It's turned into
Right?
a
What was
podcast to just like, hey, welcome to two guys just talking. Like that's what that's what we turn into.
yeah? What was the original question again? It was like, why is my map set piece combat? Is that what it was?
I was yeah about why it was like so tightly sort of devised, I guess. But
Right.
we got there in a very roundabout way. Uh,
Hopefully.
so you to move on from Doom for uh the big finale here. You've talked a little bit about and I guess like this ties into sort of more recent events on your YouTube channel and stuff. But I wanted to talk about sort of your more general experience with game development, like outside of Doom.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, what specifically are you digging for?
Well, I mean, I was hoping you would do the work with this one, but I guess you had talked about how you used to be involved in like game jams and things like that, like making little games yourself. So just sort of some background about that, I guess, and then I want to tie it into your sort of latest developments.
Ooh, fun. Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
I basically, as a means of getting into programming and practicing more, and I love games, just naturally decided to start making games. And with I don't know if you would have heard of him, but Dave and
No, I
another
haven't.
buddy of mine, we we got together. We made a little team, and with our compartmentalized responsibilities, and we started competing in game jams. Which, if anybody doesn't know, is a competition where usually a theme will be revealed at the start of the competition. So your game has to revolve around the theme of the game is a lie or light and shadow or something like that. And that is just to help police people getting a head start. So if you don't know what the theme is, then you probably can't start your game early.
Mhm.
And then the game jam would be a very tight time limit. So it could be 2 days, 3 days. I did one once that was a week long, and even that felt like not enough time. And you just make the best and most polished experience you can in that amount of time. And it is a fascinating and endlessly rewarding creative endeavor to sit down with two other people whom you love dearly, and you just put your heads together and you say, okay, we got to make a game. We've got nothing and we have to hand it in 72 hours from now. And I'm going to be sleeping. I'm not staying up all night. And you just get to go through that exciting ideation phase of like, okay, what if it's like a puzzle game, but you have to kill the character you control at the right time, or just whatever idea. What if it's shoot to move? Every game is shoot to move. You'll see 50 in every game jam.
Mhm.
And then you start building it. And then by the end, hopefully, sprint to the finish, you put a game out. So we publicly did four of those, I think, the same team. And I did the code and design, and Dave did all of the art, and our other friend who doesn't get a name because they're not as famous as Dave, I suppose. We'll keep the joke going.
Don.
Would just yeah, gone. Would fill in the gaps with everything else that we'd need. So we'd go, oh crap, we need a bullet sound effect. They would make that, or oh, can you design level 17 quick? And they'd do that. So they were always making the project better, but we're in more of a flex role. But anyway, did four of those. Some of them did just exceptionally well. The first one we ever did actually was it was a competition. There were before teams dropped out before the deadline. I think there were 1,100 teams,
Whoa.
and our team got second place.
Whoa.
So yeah, we were ecstatic. We were ecstatic. It's our first one ever, and we thought, well, now we're gonna do this forever because
Mhm.
I guess we can do it. And so it was just a nice bonus to the vibe of it all. Is hey, wow, people really liked Jim Posters was the game that we made,
Mhm. And then you got
and
1100th place at the next.
yeah, and then we got blown out. Yeah, we did another one that was like over 100, and we got third. And then in the other two we did, I think we got like top 10%. So not quite as incredible, but we were certainly very happy to always be well received.
Mhm.
And that's where my little avatar, my little pixel guy, comes from. Is he's Evil Jim from Jim Posters. I just love that so much. It's such a point in time in the history of me that I just feel like it kind of colors what I do.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, we did four of those that year, and then kind of like moved on, like physically, geographically moved to different locations, and didn't end up doing another one together as a team. But it was something I liked doing so much, and I always had a game on the back burner. So this most recent project that I've started this month, that yeah, you would have seen that YouTube video on. Sorry about the vibe of that, by the way, but is my new goal is to make a game because I enjoy it so much every month. I'm just going to make a game this month, and I'm going to make a game in February. I don't know what February's game is going to be. I barely understand what January's game is going to be, and we're already 5 days in. But I'm just doing my own game jam just for me once a month, and then yeah, I have some people who are very generously supporting me with that, and they'll be getting a copy of the game, and it's just going to be a fun community thing to uh, to just keep those skills sharp and express myself creatively and that sort of thing. And I think part of that came from making that Doom map and having so much fun with it and realizing, oh, yeah, I love crafting gameplay experiences and then watching people enjoy them in ways that I didn't think they would or tackle them in different ways and questioned why I hadn't done that for years. And so why not start? And here we are. And does that answer your question at all? I'm so sorry. I'm doing
Yeah.
my
No,
best.
it does. I guess I would wonder like what your ultimate sort of aspirations are for game development, do you think? Like is it just make your own game essentially?
It is complicated, I guess. I think I think the unfortunate truth is, without going too much into detail and like dragging the vibe down, it's been a tough life, and my options and what I can do to support myself are just laughably limited. So there's been a real struggle the last decade plus to try and figure out how in the hell I'm gonna feed myself and have shelter going forward. And I've tried a lot of things that have not worked out. A lot more normal things that any person would say, well, do this, and then you try and it doesn't work for health reasons or otherwise. So I think the aspiration with game dev is just to maybe find a thing that I genuinely enjoy doing and hopefully am all right at, and one day make enough off of that to just barely skate by, to just not have to worry about it. Right? I don't need to be a household name. I don't need most people who've played my games. But if I could pay my mortgage and heating bill and food every month off of game dev because I can work on my own schedule and around my own health problems, then that for me is the dream. It's a very modest dream, but that's the dream. And maybe one day, yeah, if things go really well and I can make kind of my dream game, you reach out to like Big Mode Publishing and say, "Hey, make my game," and I can do that. That would be fun, but only as a strictly creative endeavor.
Hmm.
I'm really not in it for. I hate attention and I hate making public appearances. You're so welcome, by the way. And and I don't really value money. I've never had it, so I just want to not have to worry about it and then do what fulfills me, and that's the end goal. So this thing I'm doing, I've been trying not to name Patreon because I'm trying not to like be grimy about it. But the thing with that whole situation is maybe one day, months to years from now, if that's pulling in my monthly expenses, then I'm set. I'm set forever and I'm happy and I'm carefree. So that's the experiment right now. And we'll do it for
Hmm.
as many months as it takes and we'll see where it goes.
Well, I suppose my question and a lot of other people's questions is, why are you only accepting uh $2 only? And a follow-up question, why be so wrong?
Oh, that's great. I disagree. Um, First of all, what I have been blown away by is I thought optimistically maybe 5 people would come by and help out, and I'd have like a $10 budget this month. And I've done much better than that. A shocking amount of people have come by, and I'm blown away by that. And what I'm also blown away by is you're right. Yeah, I specifically asked people to not give me more than $2. And every single person so far has honored that request, which is amazing, except for one person who I'm going to have to yell at, I guess, because they disobeyed me. But everybody else has been playing by my rules, which is fantastic.
I'm
The
just
reason
saying,
for that,
the same amount of people would have donated $4, you'd have doubled your money. You'd have, imagine the game you could make.
yeah, I have been in this situation before. I have been in, here is an opportunity to make more money. And usually it arrives at a time when I am very, very desperate to be making more money. And I have yet to opt for the choice that makes me the more money because usually it comes at the cost of something I'm not comfortable with, ethically speaking. And again, this probably comes from my being too cautious and analyzing things too much. And I really have a deep seated fear of being a jerk. But the thing of it is, if I were putting out a game, let's say a massive game, let's say I was putting out like Hollow Knight, somehow I made Hollow Knight and I'm Team Cherry and I'm putting that out. Actually, that's a terrible example because they charged a very reasonable price for Hollow Knight. That was one of the best things about it. I'm
Mhm.
putting out Overwatch, let's say. I could not conscionably ask $60 for a game. I don't care what game it is. Just me personally, I'm really trying not to be negative toward other people. But I've had the experience so many times in my life where I want to play a game and I can't because I'm priced out. And that pricing out could happen at $16, where I could say, I really want to play this game. I've been waiting for it to come out, but I don't have $16. I can't spare it. And it sucks. So I just have, after having experienced that so many times, I know I'm not the only one. If making the game is creatively fulfilling enough for me, and if I could put it out for free, and everything I've ever made thus far, I have put out for free. I don't even accept donations for games that I've made, Doom Launcher stuff, whatever it is. I made it. I want you to be able to enjoy it. I just hate that we always have to pay for things, just everything, right? I understand that the world works that way, but sometimes we can choose to not have it work that way. So I already feel crappy enough that I'm in a position where I'm taking on this project and I just have to ask for some amount of money to do it at all. And I have one of my friends really bullying me and trying, he's like, no, you should be charging like $10 for this. Like, this is crazy. But I'm not going to do it because
He's right.
there might be someone, maybe, but I can't and I won't because there could be someone who thought, hey, I would love to participate in this, but I don't have $10
But
and I
that's
don't want that
why,
person
you
to
know
be
what you
out.
could do, right? Here's what you do. You set up two Patreon tiers. One's $4, one's $2. They give exactly the same thing. So everyone can get it for $2, but people can give you $4 if they want to give you $4. They get exactly the same thing, but they get to make that choice.
I mean,
Problem
you
solved
could,
for everyone,
but
right?
well, that's built right in. So right now, even though I'm asking for $2, I think you can donate any amount because that one person did donate more than
Oh, there you
two
go.
dollars.
Everyone
But
go now
no,
and
don't do it.
sign
No, no,
up.
no, 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 don't do it. Don't do it. And
$20,
here, no, do not do that. $2 is
$50,
more than enough. And here's why.
$100.
The other reason why, and I think I went into this in the video, but the whole like chasing your dreams content creation thing is 100% feast or famine. Some people, if you find success, you'll get way more success than you ever needed, and you'll have so much money you don't even know what to do with it. And if you don't find that success, you get nothing. So I don't want someone to come by and give me $10. I would say, hey, good for you. You have $10 to spare. That's awesome. By the way, what's that like? I would like you to
Yeah.
find 5 creators that you want to support and give everybody a little bit. Because if we all did that instead, then yeah, the max salary of I'm a famous content creator would drop, but it would go up across the board. It'd be kind of a rising tide raises all ships situation. And it would be more viable for people to chase their dreams and do what they want to do instead of it being this can I get into the NFL level gamble. It's just I'm sick of dealing with that, and I'm not going to feed into the same system.
Hmm.
So if you want to support me, that's so awesome. It's $2 and don't give me more. And if you're feeling generous, go donate to Mount Payne's Patreon. Go donate to Decino's Patreon. Like go help out whoever's bringing you joy
Maybe a
and to
certain
make sure they can keep doing it.
podcast you're listening to right now, even.
That's a great idea. Do you know any?
I think there's one that's just these
Absolutely.
two guys just talking about seemingly nothing for 4 hours. I think it's meant to be an interview, but
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly. Go donate to if you're gonna give, also don't give Nirvana more than $2. You heard it here.
fuck.
No, I'm just kidding. Just for my personal comfort, don't give me more than $2. Yeah, take the additional 2 or the additional 5, and yeah, give them to Nirvana. Give them to anybody else you can find. There's tons of Patreons out there. There's like coffee accounts and things. There's lots of ways to support people, but cast a wide net is what I'd like to see happen. So
It's definitely difficult to. There's so much onus on self-marketing these days. Like, I feel like even a person who has no product to sell is marketing themselves on social media and stuff these days. But if you
yeah, it's
do,
the hustle.
yeah, if you do have something like the podcast, it's like, I don't know. I'm sure I would get more people to subscribe or like go to the Patreon or whatever if every single episode of what or like every video I was like, hey, check out my Patreon, or like, hey, make sure to smash the all the buttons, the bell and the fucking whatever. But it's
Yeah.
difficult to bring yourself to become that person, I think.
It feels it isn't, but it feels a little grody.
Yeah.
It's just it kind of just is the thing to do. It works. It's so widely ingrained now that I don't even think it really bothers many people anymore that everybody's doing it.
Hmm.
But if you're not used to doing it for yourself, then yeah, it feels a little gross to be like, "Hey, by the way, here's the marketing scheme. Here's what you didn't come here for, is all the marketing aspects of it."
Hmm.
So, yeah,
I
I mean,
will
I've
say
I
there have definitely been times where I've watched somebody's video and I had just forgot, like I watched their content a bunch, but I had just somehow forgotten to subscribe. And then they mention it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that. So there are times where it's less gross, and I understand why it's done. But there are times where it takes up way too much time in the content.
exactly. Yeah, I agree on both. And I think it's just a case of like having my own personal feelings about doing things like that without expecting or even wanting other people to feel the same way or conform to that behavior.
Hmm.
So I my channel, like I've never been like, comment, subscribe
Yeah.
on my Doom channel, mostly because I don't want the channel to grow. I try really hard to keep the channel from growing
Listen to
too
this
fast.
guy. Look, he's saying all this right, but he just sent me a DM and it said he actually wants people to give him $40 each.
Yeah, push back more. You're not pushing back on me enough.
Yeah,
No,
this was
yeah,
actually a scripted argument that he wanted in, and I think he's taken it too far at this point. So.
damn, I am a fine actor. Yeah, it's just a I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it's just something that it's the reality of the situation. The calls to action work, and they're not evil, but you can definitely overdo it and do it in a way that's kind of obnoxious. But
Mhm.
I don't do it at all because I hate attention, and I really have been struggling all this past year to deal with the growth of the YouTube and trying to do sneaky tricks. Like I want to bring few people over to the Twitch for my first stream, but I don't want a lot of people to come over to the Twitch because I'm scared. So I put the announcement at the very end of a 45-minute long video, so almost everybody's filtered out by then. And there's
That's where
little
you
sneaky
just you
things
just
like that.
click off the view account. You don't even know how many people are there. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I did start doing that, and that's been a huge help. But it is
Yeah.
just like I got lucky or unlucky depending on your perspective too early with that Decino video that I regret doing, and I just got a ton of attention that I was not ready for. And I'm not talking negative or positive. I'm just saying people are looking at me and I was not ready to handle that. And I've just been like tripping downhill since then. So I
Oh, come on. Yeah.
personally am never doing the call to action because I don't handle those things well, and I'm not trying to grow any faster than it's been growing.
All right.
It
Well,
freaks me out.
for anyone listening, there's going to be a link in the description, and you can go donate to the Patreon for SoBad. And I want you to be really generous and make him as uncomfortable as possible. It's gonna be
No,
great.
don't. No, please don't do that.
No, no.
Please don't do that.
Adhere to his wishes, but secretly, with a wink.
Yeah, make 4 different accounts and,
Yeah.
and donate
There
the
you go.
maximum
That's the
$2 a
perfect
month.
solution. He will never know.
Yeah, don't do that either. But
Yeah.
definitely support the Nirvana podcast, An Evening with Nirvana, your favorite Doom podcast
Yeah.
on Patreon,
Definitely do
and
that. Yes.
definitely do that. And be effusive. Just be
Be
obsequiously servile with the amount
be
that you
profligate is what I would suggest.
yeah, go nuts. And then my own other personal recommendations, just because I love their content, is if we're spreading the love, Dina Doom, love that guy's stuff.
Mhm.
We're done beefing. That's behind us. And Decino,
Yeah.
that's who I would be
I'll edit
going out and
those
doing
out
some.
so that there's only the focus on mine. But no. Casino and Mount Pain are like the only reason I ever got any subscribers on this channel for their shout outs, to be honest. Super nice guys, both of them.
Yeah, and just great content. High effort, great content. I would love to see more of that. I don't know how they do it, and I don't know how they do it as often as they do it. What is going on? How do people find the
I think
time and
they
energy to
both
do these
just
things?
really invested. Mount Pain I talk to quite a bit actually now after doing the podcast, and he's very enthusiastic just about, you know, doom mapping and about film, and like we talk about film a bit sometimes and stuff like that. And he's just an enthused, energetic person when it comes to that kind of content, I think.
That's fun. Yeah, he seems like a great guy. I've never really spoken to him personally, but there was a running gag for a few weeks on my Twitch that I was beefing with him because I think YouTube didn't send him one of my comments on one of his videos, so it didn't get hearted. And then
Uh,
we made a joke of blowing that way out of proportion, like, oh, beefing with Mount Pain. And then it escaped the Twitch a little bit, and people would be leaving comments on Mount Pain's YouTube videos like, why are you beefing with SoBad?
See,
So we had to shut it down.
this is how SoBad's insidious though. This was all part of his marketing strategy. He's like, if I can get intertwined in the world of Mount Pain, I can bring some of those viewers over to me.
Oh man,
That's what it's about.
you know what's funny is I've worked professionally in marketing, and that is where I have gotten my knowledge on like what to avoid doing if
Oh
I
yeah.
want to grow as slowly as possible, and it has been really helpful.
uh, if I ever hear the words SEO again, I'm gonna throw myself off a bridge, I think.
Oh, a bridge into some money, you mean? That you're
Ugh,
making off all that SEO.
ugh. It's the
Good for you.
that would be another massive tangent because it's something I'm very actively disgusted about, and I think it's ruining the entire internet. But that's a topic for another time, probably.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear you talk about that at some point.
Yeah, well, it won't be on the podcast because, boy, have we talked about a lot of things we weren't prepared to tackle. But
Well, I had a great time. DM me. DM me the rant on
I will
SEO. I would love to hear your opinion on that.
definitely, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun, and now we have to get to a question that you've already answered right at the beginning of the podcast. But
I wonder
yeah,
what
I
it could be.
wonder what could be your favorite Doom monster, so bad.
Geez, that's a good question. Well, ever since I played Ancient Aliens, which we've established came out in 2003, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Uh,
93, I think, the year Doom came out the same year.
that sounds right.
Yeah.
I think that sounds right. Yeah, no, my favorite, yeah, as mentioned, I love the Revenant. That's what inspired me to make that How to Doom Revenants video because I think it's the most interesting enemy to engage with. It has so many neat little hidden mechanics, some of which feel like intentional design, and others kind of feel like maybe ghosts in the code base a little bit, but it's fascinating either way. And oh crap, what was I saying? Oh yeah, and there was I had noticed specifically with that video when I went to make it that the specific mechanic of the Revenant where you can keep it at kind of chase range and it never shoots, and then there's a melee range where it tries to punch you. And if you pain state it at any point, it will retaliate unless it is still kept perpetually in melee range. And that's something that I had been using for years, but not seeing a lot of other people intentionally do. I'm sure many were, but it just didn't seem like something that had been explicitly kind of exposited before. And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of sparked the whole video where I was like, wait a minute, why can't I find any like blog posts on how this revenant mechanic works? And then I ended up making that whole thing. So now I'm kind of nostalgic about that monster. I kind of have it to thank because that is my I think most well received YouTube video so far, even though I'd do it differently if I could go back and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
But good lord, what a fun monster. It's just the second there's one revenant in the room, you're doing the whole fight a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm fighting, 100 Hell Knights in front of me, I'm killing the one Revenant that got left alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so fun. That kind of asymmetry in the monster design I think is one of the best things about Doom. It's just fun to engage with. You are always making decisions room to room, shot to shot. What's the best way to spend my time right now? And the Revenant is just a quintessential example of that. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, they have a lot of great features. I mean, you talk about asymmetry, and I mean, they're the only monster that, well, apart from the Mancubus, I guess, that gives you like an asymmetrical movement pattern with just the one monster. Where if you have three Revenants or something, you can't just move in one set pattern usually because you might be getting non-homing rockets at the same time as homing rockets.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. They're also the only monster with a dedicated melee attack,
yep.
as opposed to an otherwise projectile attack, which is neat. Like obviously, pinkies have a dedicated melee attack, but that's all they do. It's not interesting to talk about. So that's neat. Yeah, it's just a cool monster.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's just complicated enough where on a surface level you don't have to really understand what's going on to fight a few effectively. You just dodge the rockets and you shoot them. But the better you understand it, the skill ceiling skyrockets and you can really abuse these things
Hmm.
and survive some pretty insane setups with them.
Yeah, and they're also very just usable from a mapping perspective because they're so small and they can use stairs very easily compared to other monsters and follow the player into spaces that usually only he can go in and stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah,
lots of
and they're thin
aspects.
bodies and they don't take a lot of damage before they die. So a huge amount of revenants can just be kind of culled more quickly than a huge amount of another monster because your rocket splash kind of spreads deeper, it feels like. Actually, I don't even know if that's true, but it definitely feels like that's true. Maybe it's just because they have less health than something like a Hell Knight. But I think actually now that I mention it, I think I'm wrong because I think the Revenant's actual like collision box is the same size as an Imp's, and there's just not a lot of variety
Yeah,
there.
I think that
So
is the case.
scratch that from the record. I've
Staying
been
in.
wrong about everything today. Who you got a total fraud on your podcast, my
Shoot.
guy? What are you
Wrong
thinking?
about the amount that you should donate to him. Wrong about this. Wrong about it all.
Oh
And
boy.
then that's so bad. Wait. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It was a lot of fun. We went on a lot of tangents, which usually means it's been a good conversation, in my opinion.
I really enjoyed it. I thank you very much for having me on. I do listen all the time, and it's a little surreal in a nice way to be like, oh man, I get to be on an evening with Nirvana. That's dope. that's that's neat. So thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah,
And hopefully it was any fun at all.
yeah, it was great. No, it was really good. And yeah, I mean, this is like the inside the actor studio of Doom, so pretty prestigious.
Oh yeah, that's a deep cut reference. So are you gonna do your inside the actors studio moment where you get Dave Chappelle to come on and interview you to cap it all off?
Well, I always think of that as like a Tonight Show thing. Maybe more so when Johnny Carson was around, which maybe no one even knows who that is anymore. But not that I was around when Johnny Carson was around, but he used to get George Carlin to do the hosting for him, which is sort of what, because Carlin used to do a lot of like Johnny Carson's.
Right, right. Yeah, I was. I think actually we've had this conversation before, but I was a big Dick Cavett guy.
Yeah,
Not while he
I
was
don't
on,
even know who that
obviously. I
is.
wasn't alive, but I like Dick Cavett.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of late night because I think I was just always someone who was up late in general. So I would just sit down in front of the TV and there would be like, you know, Conan and Letterman and all of them. I didn't really like Leno all that much, but who did, really? Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
I'm with you. Not a Leno guy. I think Conan's probably my favorite
Yeah, Conan's
person in there.
always seemed like the most genuine dude. And, you know, when he got that big severance deal when Jay Leno wanted his spot back on the Tonight Show, he gave a big chunk of it to his staff, and I was like, you know what? Conan's alright.
Oh yeah. Which, by the way, that the best Norm Macdonald moment in history is going on Conan's show after he had been canceled and pretending that he had forgotten to send him his congratulatory basket for getting the show.
Right.
Oh my god, it's devastating. It's so amazing. That
Yeah.
guy's great. Are we still on? Are we just tangenting again?
No, we're still on.
Oh god. Get us
Some
out of here.
sometimes I just end the episode with a continuation of nothing, really.
I
Um,
like that.
but yeah. Anyway, go to check out the Patreon. It's very worthwhile for SoBad. He's making a game every month. It's crazy talk. Definitely go support him. Watch him on Twitch and stuff. There'll be some links. Thank you all very much for listening, and I will be back next week with another guest. Goodbye.
Thank you.